All right, this first session is brought to you today by Queen's University of Charlotte and my alma mater, which I'm excited to have them here, East Carolina University. I am going to do a quick screen share because I always love to welcome our guests, even though they don't know the welcome is coming, but we are so happy to have Kristi Dosh here today. On the behalf of the Sport Management Association, I want to welcome you to our symposium today. For your first session, Workshop for Student Athletes Maximizing NIL. This should be extremely exciting on today. Little background on Kristi. This is actually not her first time presenting at our symposium. She is a sport business reporter analyst, has reported on everything from collective bargaining to endorsements to finances, from the pro end of things to intercollegiate athletics for outlets such as ESPN, Forbes, the Washington Post, Sports Business Journal, and much more. Prior to joining ESPN, Kristi was a practicing attorney and a sports business analyst for Forbes, Comcast Sports, Southeast and Morton. She founded businessofcollegesports.com in 2010 and started the Business of College Sports podcast in early 2020. She is also the host of the Game Face podcast from Linktree, which educates student athletes on how to grow their personal brands, maximize name, image, and likeness opportunities. Kristi's book on the business of college football, Saturday Millionaires, How Winning Football Builds Winning Colleges, was released from Wiley Turner Publishing on September the 10th, 2013. She is also, after all of that, is an adjunct lecturer at the University of Florida, where she teaches a course of name, image, and likeness. Kristi has a Bachelor's of Arts from, I may say that right, is it Oglethorpe University in Politics, and a JD from the University of Florida. Everyone, let's give a virtual applause for Kristi Dosh. Throw up some emojis, icons, whatever you gotta do. Let's see them all light up. Kristi, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I am glad to be back again. In fact, I was supposed to be traveling and doing this from a hotel room because I wanted to make sure that I got to be part of this, but I actually ended up getting back home last night, so you guys don't have to look at my hotel room bed. So much better setting here. You may see a guest appearance by my cat, who I can't keep off my desk this morning. So if you see a cat tail in front of my face, just ignore it. She would like to be famous too. We joke that she wants to be a cat blogger because she's always trying to help us type on our computers. I'm excited to talk about this because I have done nothing but cover NIL since June of 2021. I very rarely write about anything else anymore. I write about NIL almost every single day and speak on it quite a bit as well. It has become my whole world. I just got back from University of Florida, where I was working with some of their student athletes. And so I actually tweaked my presentation a little bit this morning based on some questions and some conversations we had at UF and some of the things student athletes still felt like they didn't know. So I am going to share my screen here so I can give you guys some PowerPoints to look at because I had a few examples on here. I want to give you two of student athletes who are doing a great job with their name, image, and likeness and maximizing their opportunities with name, image, and likeness. So I wanted to start with the top questions I'm getting from student athletes. And this is Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA. I mean, all student athletes essentially have the same questions at this point. And the first one is, how do I start getting NIL deals? I sat at a table Monday night at UF with hundreds of female student athletes in the room, and almost all of them who came by my table asked me, how do I get started? Because a lot of them have been busy with school and busy being in season, and so they haven't necessarily gotten to even start working on this yet. So, sorry, I can hear something
my
somewhere.
Apologies, sure Jerry Williams, can you mute, please?
If you're a player with not having any guaranteed money,
Jerry Williams, can you mute, please?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. So I'm going to try and cover as many of these questions as I can, but I think it's always helpful too for those of us who are helping student athletes to sort of recognize the questions that they still have. And if you're a student athlete and you think you're all alone, I just want you to know that many of the student athletes out there have the same questions. I also get a lot of questions about the marketplaces, or even like, what is a marketplace? So some of the ones you may have heard of are Icon Source, Open Doors has its own marketplace, Market Price. There are quite a few of these marketplaces out there. In fact, if you're interested in that and you're looking for them, there is a tracker on my Business of College Sports website. If you go under the menu that says tracker, there is a tracker of all the marketplaces, some of which allow you to get matched with brands for deals, some of which allow you to create your own merchandise, to sell your coaching services, almost anything you want to do with your NIL. There are one or more websites out there to help you do that, and we'll chat about that a little bit more. Also, a lot of questions around pricing. So for those of you who have gotten offers, a lot of you are getting DMs from, smaller brands who want to know how they can work with you. And one of the biggest questions I always get is on pricing and how to price yourself. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I got the agent question a lot at UF this week, and whether or not student athletes need an agent, and if they do need one, how do they find one? Still a lot of questions going on in that space, and even a lot of questions from agents as well about how name, image, and likeness works, and making sure that they're getting involved in it in a way that they're not jeopardizing student athlete eligibility. And then, of course, last but not least, what do I need to know now that I'm actually making money? So for the student athletes who have sort of figured it out and started getting those initial deals, some of them are making more money than they imagined they would make, which, good problem to have, right? We wish we all had that problem. But figuring out how to manage that money responsibly and figuring out how to put aside the right money for taxes, which I know is not fun to talk about, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it because I am not an expert on that. But just knowing that that is an issue that you need to tackle as you start to monetize your name, image, and likeness. So I thought we would start by taking a look at the ways that student athletes are actually monetizing their name, image, and likeness so far. So probably the most prevalent one, and the one that kicked off name, image, and likeness last July, is lots of social media marketing. That is the lowest hanging fruit. We are seeing student athletes participate in social media marketing campaigns for brands who have very small followings. This is not something where you have to have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers. You can have 1,500 followers and be getting brands in your DMs who are offering you maybe free product, or maybe it's $25 or $50 for an Instagram post versus, 6 and 7 figures for some of these student athletes who have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. But social media marketing truly is for everyone. And in fact, the student athlete that you see pictured here, she is an HBCU student athlete at Edward Waters. I live just outside of Jacksonville, Florida on Amelia Island, and I heard about her because she was in the Jacksonville Business Journal. She is believed to be the first female HBCU women's basketball player to sign an NIL deal. She sold it with a freight and trucking company here in Jacksonville who wanted to use her to help advertise their job openings. So social media marketing isn't always about having a huge following and selling. I watch The Bachelor, and they always joke that everybody that leaves The Bachelor and The Bachelorette goes and sells tummy tea. So it's not always about, big brand names and products that you're hawking on Instagram. We've seen some companies get really creative with who they work with, and they often want someone who has a specific background or who has a specific niche of followers. And so we're seeing large social media deals, even for people who have, 3,000 followers. So social media marketing truly is for everyone in this space. Camps and clinics are also something that we've really seen across the board in all of the divisions and over in NAIA as well, putting on camps and clinics either yourself or licensing your name to an existing camp or clinic, working with coaches that you've had in the past who put on their own camps and clinics and want to now make you part of that and compensate you for being part of that. That's truly something that we are seeing at every level as well. Personal appearances. I will say that the personal appearances have tended at this point to be Division I student athletes who have name recognition. A lot of football and men's basketball players, even into women's basketball players, baseball and softball at some level. And that's not to say that it's not happening in other places, but I would say that the in-person appearances to this point, along with my next one, which is autographs and memorabilia, those have tended so far to be at the higher levels, although not exclusively. In a lot of small towns, small college communities, student athletes there are local heroes, and they're getting NIL deals with local restaurants and local sporting equipment stores and that sort of thing. So although we hear a lot about it at the highest level, I do think it's something that ultimately everyone can take advantage of. Group licensing has really been heating up. And if you don't know yet what group licensing is, that's when a brand wants to work with, I would say 2 or more student athletes. And we've seen a couple of companies coming into this space, One Team Partners and the Brandar Group. They've been going around and working with athletic departments to be able to offer their group licensing programs to the student athletes in those athletic departments. Those companies, One Team Partners and the Brandar Group, they actually represent the student athletes, not the university. Now, they need permission from the athletic department to get in front of their student athletes and tell them about group licensing and give them the option to opt in. Also, those companies have licensing rights to these universities to be able to use their logos on merchandise. And so if you've started to hear about the jersey programs that are coming that are going to have individual student athlete names and numbers, and those student athletes are going to get compensated, that's group licensing. Trading card deals are also usually group licensing. And if you're a gamer and you're looking forward to the EA Sports NCAA football game coming back, that is how that game is going to come back, is through group licensing. And they have already announced that it's coming back. So we're seeing more and more of that coming down the pike. Merchandise. I am blown away by the number of student athletes who are creating their own merchandise. And part of that is a product of how easy that is to do now. It used to be you had to go find, someone in your town who could screen print t-shirts, and you had to order a minimum number of them, and they sat in big boxes in your garage. It's not like that anymore. There are a number of companies out there. They're on that marketplace tracker that I have as well, where you can create your own merchandise and you don't have to actually hold the merchandise. It's printed on demand. And anyone can do it. And so we've seen a lot of student athletes creating their own logos and creating their own merchandise. And in fact, I'm going to show you an example on a later slide of a Division III student athlete who's at a school you've never heard of. You've probably never heard of her. She plays field hockey. She's not someone who gets a lot of attention as a student athlete, but has a sizable social media following and has been able to be very successful with her own line of merchandise. So something I think is available to student athletes at all levels. Affiliate and ambassador roles, we see a lot of that too. And actually, I have an example of that on a later slide as well. This is when you see student athletes usually posting on social media. You might do some in-person appearances in an ambassador role as well. But it's generally when you see somebody posting either their own link they want you to use to go purchase something, or they have a code that you put in at checkout. And that allows them to earn a commission on every sale through their link or through their code. It doesn't cost the person buying it anything extra, but you do tend to see a lot of that in influencer marketing in general, not just with student athletes. And those roles are usually available to you with a smaller following because it's less risk for the brand, because they're only paying you if you actually drive traffic to their site and drive sales. NFTs have become really popular, and it's interesting because I've interviewed a lot of student athletes who are creating their own NFTs or working with other companies to create NFTs. And I have to admit that I still am totally wrapping my head around NFTs and cryptocurrency. And a lot of the student athletes I meet with are the same way. They want to create their own NFTs. They understand the buzz around it. They understand it at a surface level. But when we really start talking about NFTs, there's still stuff they don't understand either. So that's something that there's a lot of companies out there that are helping student athletes navigate. I've talked to a number of student athletes who are blogging, which makes me excited because much of my career has been built on blogging. I've been blogging for 17 years. I've had a number of sites over the years. My business to college sports site was once upon a time, a free little WordPress blog that no one read. And I just sold a minority interest in that website. I'm going to be making that news more public here soon, but that was a free WordPress site I started while I was an attorney that I just blogged on nights and weekends, and have been able to grow into a full-time business for myself. So a lot of student athletes who either had existing blogs that they're now figuring out how to monetize, or who are wanting to start new ones. In fact, I had a number of UF student athletes ask me about that a couple of nights ago. Podcasting is also really hot. I'm keeping a tracker of that as well. Student athletes who have started their own podcast. That is over on my Business of College Sports website as well. We also see big podcasting companies paying student athletes to come bring podcasts to their platform, or existing podcasts in the college sports space who are paying student athletes to be guests on their podcast. So podcast is another area where I've seen a lot of student athletes getting involved. Public speaking, so many opportunities for student athletes for public speaking, whether it's going and speaking to youth sports organizations or Rotary clubs, booster clubs. Again, this is something that I think student athletes at every level can do and are out there doing, and getting paid to go out there and speak in front of groups. We've seen student athletes who have an interest outside of sports, whether it's music or art, or they've written a book, and now they're able to not only monetize it. I mean, in the past, you could get waivers from the NCAA to monetize those kind of things, but now they can use their status as a student athlete to promote it, which was not something they could do even if they got that waiver previously. So a lot of student athletes continuing to pursue that. And then just generally entrepreneurship opportunities. I just sat down with a UF student athlete yesterday who is a grad student. And so she's thinking about what she's going to do beyond graduation. And she sat down and showed me this website she's built and a course she's built and these business ideas she has. And she's really working while she's completing her grad degree. She's using these resources at the university and the people she has access to at the university to form her LLC, to build her website, to create a logo, to get her business up and running, so that by the time she graduates, she's going to be able to work for herself and have a company. In fact, she's already put out one product that sold out. And so she's going to have something that when she graduates, she doesn't even have to look for a job. And that's not for everybody. Not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. And as somebody who has owned 3 companies, let me tell you, it is not for the weak of heart. But I think NIL gives student athletes an opportunity they didn't have before, that if that's something they want to pursue, now you have that ability to pursue it while you're still in school and start monetizing it. So I wanted to show you examples of a few student athletes who are not Division I student athletes. And I know we have some Division I student athletes who are involved in this today, but I think we see those deals in the media quite a bit. So I wanted to make sure you saw some Division II, Division III, and NAIA student athlete deals. I could fill the rest of my time with screenshots of this. I'm only going to show you 3. I'm going to show you one of each division, but I want you to know that there was no shortage of examples for me to give you. The first one's Trevor Bassett. Trevor is a Division II track and field student athlete. He competed in the Olympic trials. He was planning to go pro this year instead of coming back for his last year of school and his last year of eligibility. But because of NIL and because of the opportunities he was getting for NIL, he decided to stay. And he is a Division II student athlete who only has 3,000 followers on Instagram. We're not talking about somebody who has an enormous social following, but he hustles. He had a marketing plan he had built out for how he was going to support himself as a professional athlete. And he put that into play now as a student athlete. And he was sending emails and sending DMs and going to talk to local businesses in person. And if you want to hear more of Trevor's story, the reason I know it is because I interviewed him on my Game Face podcast. That episode actually came out either this week or last week. So it's already out for you to listen to if you want his advice on how to get that going. But a student athlete who only has 3,000 followers on Instagram, who has been able to monetize and support himself to come back for his final year. He is planning to go pro after this year, and he already has all these sponsorships lined up so that he can support himself and be a full-time professional athlete when he leaves school. Super impressive young man. Another person I've been really impressed by is Bree Soccer. Bree is the student athlete I mentioned a few minutes ago, Division III student athlete, field hockey, school you've probably never heard of. Look, I was a Division III student, so I can say that because nobody's ever heard of my school either. But I had Bree on my Game Face podcast as well. She has either 30 or 40,000 followers on Instagram. So she is someone who had a larger social following, but was able to start monetizing it. She actually graduated in December, so she only had access to NIL for one semester, but she really maximized that one semester. Not only did she do deals with brands for social media marketing, she created her own merchandise line. And that's what this photo is a photo of a sweatshirt she created herself. It's sold out. So she's been creating her own merchandise, building out her own store, and then also strategically working with brands as well. And just really getting out there and talking about and posting about the things she loves around fitness and around health. So she's a really great person to follow her journey as well. And then Chloe Mitchell, really impressive NAIA student athlete. She's a volleyball student athlete. She grew her TikTok following the summer before she started college doing a she shed. And now she does all these DIY home improvement projects. She does have a huge following on Instagram and on TikTok. She was the first student athlete. This is your trivia. If you ever need to answer a trivia question, who was the first student athlete to monetize their NIL? It's Chloe Mitchell, because the NAIA passed their NIL rules in October of 2020 ahead of the NCAA in July of 2021. So she got sort of a running start. She actually formed her own marketplace. It's called Playbooked. So that was one of the first marketplaces because she specifically geared it towards NAIA student athletes in the beginning, although now it's open to everyone. So incredibly impressive for I think now 19-year-old. She's done deals with Ford, Target, Home Depot. This is a deal here in this picture with Third Love. This is the example I was talking about where she's got a code here in her post. Not only was she paid by Third Love to do their marketing, but she also has her own code so that she's earning commission every time somebody buys something from Third Love using her code. I talk to her and her parents all the time about their business and about the things that they're doing there. And I mean, she has built a thriving business. I think she's struggling to figure out how to balance classes and volleyball and running this business. And she sort of has two businesses. She has the marketplace and then also sort of her own business as an influencer working on these brand deals, and just incredible what she's been able to build, you know, an NAIA student athlete who none of us would have ever heard of, except that she has this huge TikTok following and has now been able to monetize it. So another really inspiring person to follow there. Okay. Now that you've got some inspiration, let's talk about how you do this and sort of the advice I find myself giving to student athletes all the time. Actually, sorry, my bullets got out of order, so I'm going to put two of them up there. So at first, you know, one of the things I get asked about is, how do I get started? How do I monetize my NIL? And I always start by talking to student athletes about what their goals are, not only their goals for NIL, but what are your career goals? What are the things you enjoy doing? Because I don't think there's one path. I think that for some people, doing one-on-one coaching lessons and putting on a clinic, they love that. It's the best way for them to make money, and that's all they're going to do. For some people, they've already got an existing engaged social following. And I know I've already said it a couple of times, but I want to hammer this into you. You do not have to have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of followers to monetize your social media. Increasingly, social media marketing is moving towards what's called micro influencers. That's people under 10,000 followers. I get offers in my DMs on Instagram all the time. I have 1,600 followers on Instagram. So that's really something that's possible for people at all levels and all followings, but it's not right for everybody. If you haven't already been active on social media, if you don't enjoy being on social media, don't go get on it just to monetize your NIL. There's so many other ways. And that's why I started this out with that list of ways to monetize your name, image, and likeness, because I'm not going to tell you social media marketing is the way. Is that the low-hanging fruit and sort of one of the easiest ones? Absolutely. If you already are active and you've already got an engaged following. But, you know, take a look. I can send that list so that you guys can look at it again later. If you didn't write it down or screenshot it, I'll make sure I can get that to you. But there are a lot of ways to monetize your name, image, and likeness. So start asking yourself, what do you enjoy doing? Do you sit in your dorm room or your apartment and play video games? Fantastic. Sign up for Yoke. Like an egg yolk, except it's spelled Y-O-K-E. If you don't already know about Yoke, on Yoke, you can earn money playing video games against people, against fans, random individuals. There are actually a fair number of student athletes I've talked to who are making some good money on yoke, sitting playing video games like they were already doing in their dorm room or their apartment, except now they're making money doing it. So think about the things you already enjoy and how can you monetize that thing you already enjoy. And also think critically about what your career goals are and what NIL activities could you get involved in now, or what things could you start building and establishing now that are going to help you achieve those career goals. It might be the entrepreneurship route. It might be building a business that you're going to have after graduation. It might not be. One of the student athletes I talked to at UF this week has been using NIL as an opportunity to talk to more brands and get on the phone with their executives. And she's targeting brands in the field she wants to go work in after graduation. She's using her status as a student athlete and these conversations about NIL that she's been lucky enough to have to make connections that she hopes help her get a job after graduation. She told me, I don't care if I make any money off of this. This isn't about making money for me. It's about meeting the right people who can help me get a job after graduation. And so I often talk to student athletes about their career goals and how can we tailor what you're pursuing with your NIL to meet those career goals. And that conversation looks different for everyone for obvious reasons. If you are going to try to monetize your social media, or even if you're just getting ready for what you're going to do after graduation, now's probably the time, if you haven't done it already, to clean up your social media bio and your posts. And I'm not talking just about inappropriate things. I mean, hopefully you don't have those anyway, but really making it clear in your bio and in your post who you are. What is your personal brand? I was sitting yesterday with Leah Clapper, who's a gymnast at UF. And I told her, I said, what do you think your personal brand is? And she told me. And I said, well, I can tell you because I've talked to a lot of people who know you. I sat at a table full of student athletes who ended up talking about her Monday night. And I said, the first thing everyone says about you is how happy and enthusiastic Leah Clapper is and how much Leah Clapper smiles. And when she gets covered during gymnastics meets, the commentators are constantly talking about what makes her stand out on the beam is her smile. She isn't just like faking a smile that's for competition. She like lights up when she competes. And she's just one of those people who in all her social media posts, she's so happy and always smiling. And that is her brand, is finding joy in things and making gymnastics fun. She talks about that all the time for, younger kids who are competing, about making it fun and not getting caught up in sort of the competition and the achievement-based goals, but just having fun with it. And so think about what you want your personal brand to be. When people hear your name, what are those first things you want to come to mind for them? And does your social media reflect that? And I think that starts from how you describe yourself in your bio, and then obviously it goes throughout your posts as well. So take a look at your social media and really look at it with a critical eye and ask yourself, what am I conveying to someone when they land on my profile and they read my bio and they look through my last few posts? What are they going to think about me? And this is not just for brands that might want to partner with you, but trust me, your future employers are going to look at your social media if you have it. And putting it private honestly doesn't really help because it just makes me suspicious if you have it private. If you have it private, I assume there's things you don't want me to see. So I've heard a lot of employers say, they want to see your social media. They don't want it to be private. They want to know that you know how to conduct yourself, but they also want to get to know you and who you are. And social media is a great way to sort of put together a portfolio of who you are and what you want to do. Oops, sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Also, go ahead and sign up for at least 2 marketplaces. And I say that because so many student athletes have come to me and said, I don't know how to get started. I don't know how to monetize my NIL. And I say like, okay, well, what are you doing? And they're doing nothing yet because they don't know where to get started. And so I think taking a look at the available marketplaces and doing that first step, thinking critically about what you already like to do, what your career goals are, and then find the marketplaces that fit that. There are marketplaces, like I said, that are just for getting paired with brands that want to work with you, largely on social media, but sometimes it's also for personal appearances. But also coaching one-on-one lessons, some of which can be done online. It doesn't have to be people who are right there in your town, hosting camps and clinics, doing your own merchandise. There's so many different ways to do this. And whatever way you're thinking of, there's probably a marketplace for it, because these marketplaces pop up. I get emailed by probably 2 or 3 new ones every single week. I'm constantly updating that marketplace tracker. So if there's something that you want to do in NIL, there is probably something out there built to help you do it. So take a look at those and get yourself on those, especially for social media. If you're wanting to figure out how to monetize your social media, make it easy for brands to find you. It only takes a few minutes to get set up on those marketplaces and fill out your name and your bio and your email, and then connect your social accounts. And then brands can find you when they're on there and they're searching for somebody with a specific audience or around specific keywords. You want to be on the marketplace so they can find you. Some of these marketplaces have told me that they have brand deals that are sitting on the marketplace going unclaimed because they don't have enough student athletes signed up for them. So it can be a little overwhelming because there are so many of them. But the ones on my tracker, I can tell you that I have vetted at some level. Now, I can't assure you that, they're all going to be the right fit for you or that they're all perfect, but I have been pitched some I have not included on there because I don't think they understand the NIL rules. I don't think they're protecting student athletes and their eligibility. And so I won't put them on there. So the ones I've put on there, I've had a conversation with at least one of the founders. I've done a demo and seen what it looks like. And at some level, I feel comfortable putting it out there for student athletes to sign up for. So if you're looking for ones to sign up for, I've got that list available on Business to College Sports. And then be proactive about brands you already use. So if you're looking to do brand deals in the social media space, you want to be an ambassador or an affiliate, something like that, think about the brands you already use and talk about those brands on social media before you're a partner. People don't necessarily, when I talk to them, want to put up an Instagram post featuring a product they already use and love because they think, why would the brand pay me if I'm already giving them promotion for free? That's not how it works at all, okay? When you tag a brand on social media, they take notice of you. They look at who you are. They read that bio. They look at your last few posts. That's why it's important to get all that cleaned up to see who you are. And I have had many occasions where I have tagged brands in one post, or maybe it takes 3 posts, and then they DM me or they email me and say, we see that you love our brand. Like, we're so excited that you love our brand. Here's how we work with people. We'd love to talk to you about doing something. So if there are whether it's something you eat or it's something that a product that you use during, your workouts or whatever it is, go ahead and start sharing about it on social and tag the brand when you do it. They do pay attention to that stuff and it can lead to future deals with them. So that's I'll get off my soapbox about brands. But I did want to talk about, especially with social media marketing, because since it's the low-hanging fruit, and I know that's what a lot of student athletes are choosing to do. I'm sorry, went ahead too fast. Some of the issues you run into and a lot of the questions I'm getting around social media marketing are around pricing. Sorry guys, need a little water. So I'm in a group of female influencers. They're not student athletes, largely speaking, but these are women that were already doing brand deals prior to NIL. And I asked their permission to use these posts. Some of them didn't want their names or their faces shared, so that's why it's blacked out, but they gave me permission to share these just so you understand the pricing questions that people have. And like, for example, the first woman, it was going to be her first deal. She had never been paid for content before. And you can see on that, well, maybe you can't see, I don't know how good you guys can see the screen, but on there, she says that she has 1,400 followers. So again, does not take an enormous number of followers because she has an 18% engagement rate. The average engagement on Instagram is somewhere between 2 and 3%. So 18% is enormous. And that's the reason brands are increasingly working with micro influencers, because even though their number of followers is smaller, their engagement tends to be higher. They tend to have, not always, but a lot of them have a more niche following. And that's why this brand was interested. And then the other person already had some content they had done with a brand, and now the brand was wanting to use it in new ways. And she was trying to figure out, how do I get compensated for that additional use? And so there's a lot of questions that everyone has around pricing. Trust me, it's not easy for me when I have to figure out my pricing. So there's a book that I read that's called Influencer by Brittany Hennessy. And if you are interested in social media marketing, I 100% recommend her book. She was in charge of influencer marketing for Hearst magazines and worked on her side engaging influencers. And so she wrote this book for influencers on what you should know about what happens on the other side of the table and how you should value yourself. And so her formula for how you figure out your pricing is distribution fee plus talent fee equals what you should charge. So your distribution fee is going to be factors like your follower count, your engagement rate, but also you need to include, and this is what people forget, like they go and do these online calculators, and I'm going to show you one of those in a second, and they get this rate that's just based on their number of followers, sometimes based on their number of followers and their engagement rate, but they don't think about the rest. Like, you should essentially get a talent fee for either being in the photo or for creating the product photo that you're taking. You need to take into consideration any props that you have to buy. Do you have to get fresh flowers to be in that picture? Do there have to be certain balloons? Do you have to be wearing certain clothes? And then, especially for larger influencers, they might be renting out a space to shoot in. Maybe it's a hotel room or a vacation rental or office space because their dorm room or their apartment isn't appropriate for what they need to shoot. All of that goes into that distribution fee. So it's not just your follower count and your engagement, it's all these other things you take into consideration as well. And that talent fee needs to take into consideration the time it's going to take you to do it. And she suggests that you start, if you're a new creator that hasn't been paid before, that you start at $25 an hour and think about how long it's going to take you, not just to shoot the one photo. How long is it going to take you to review any materials the brand sends over about the brand, about the product, about their messaging, time you spend researching the brand and really understanding it and the audience they're trying to reach, time you spend brainstorming the content, and then the time you spend actually creating the content, taking the photo, writing the caption, all that sort of stuff. So all that goes into the talent fee. And she says all that together gets you what you should charge. That still doesn't make it easy, quite frankly, but it does at least give you things to think about so you don't underprice yourself, because most people when they're first starting out, and this is particularly true, unfortunately, studies show for women, more true even than men, that we underprice ourselves. And I think we all do it, but studies show women tend to do it at higher rates than men tend to do it. So I think a good starting point is to start with a calculator, which again is probably only going to take into consideration your number of followers and your engagement. This is one calculator I've used. This one doesn't even take into account your engagement. This only takes into account your following. However, I have found it to be like a pretty good gauge of where I should start, or if a brand throws out a number, I can run it through this calculator and figure out, like, are they even in the ballpark? And it goes on, this page is much longer than this and has all the different social networks, and you just plug in your number of followers and it gives you a number. There are some more advanced calculators out there that will take into account your engagement rate as well. Unfortunately, some of them want you to sign up for something or pay for something, but this is a good free one on Squad's site that you can go and just plug in your number of followers, and at least gives you a starting point if a brand throws out a number to figure out whether they're in the ballpark or not. Another thing that comes up a lot is free product, especially when you have a smaller following. A lot of the initial outreach you're going to get, and I put some examples of some DMs here, and maybe if I get these slides to somebody afterwards, we can make these accessible for everybody, or I'll put them up on my site somewhere where you guys can all get them. But again, screenshots from this group that I'm in of people who got offered free product and needed to evaluate whether it's worth it or not. And so for the first one that's up here, they told them that they would give them a 25% discount plus free shipping on anything that they wanted to order for themselves. And then they'll also give them a code they can give out to their followers for 15% off. And then every purchase their followers make, they get 30% commission on that. And you get a lot of these kind of DMs. I would say once you hit 1,000 followers, you might start getting these, depending on what kind of content you're posting. And it can sound really enticing sometimes. Sometimes they're even sending you a couple of items for free up front. But think about the time it's going to take you to create content to be able to capitalize on this. So you're only going to make money if you're able to post enough to get people to buy it to earn that commission. Now, depending on the product, you might just be happy getting the product. Maybe it's something you really want. And the example I always give is I got a free product years ago, like almost 10 years ago now. And it's called Chili Sleep. And it's a pad you put on your bed on top of your mattress that you can control the temperature of from like 65 degrees, I think, to like 90 degrees or something. And they market it towards athletes, and being able to sleep on this, like on a cooler pad, is supposed to help with recovery and performance. And they sent me one years ago. I ended up starting to sleep on it, and I got sort of addicted to it. I love it. It's the greatest thing ever. So it died. Okay. I had it for like 9 years, and last year it died. It runs on this little motor that you sit under your bed or on your nightstand, and it died. So I wanted a new one, and I went to look online, and I'd sort of forgotten how expensive this thing is. It's like $800. And I thought, do I want it that bad? I mean, you can get like a new mattress for $800 depending on what you're getting. And so I reached out to the brand and I said, years ago, you guys sent me this. It died, but I love it. I would love to have a new one. Here's what I can do for you. I can put a blog post on my Business of College Sports website. Here's our metrics, what our traffic looks like, who our readers are. I can put it in my newsletter. I can do a social media post. Here's who my audience is and why it's a good fit for you. So I made my pitch, and they did end up sending me another one. And that to me was worth it, just to get the free product and not have them pay me a dime, because it's an $800 product. But if people are sending you an $8 tube of lipstick, and you've got to, shoot photos and put up content of it, and you're only going to make money if someone uses your code, or maybe you don't even get that, they're just sending you the free product, then think about, is that worth the time it would take you to create the content? And you've got to really weigh that, and know that if you're trying to do something that's an affiliate or ambassador situation where you're going to make your money on the commission, that's not going to be just one post. That's going to be a lot of posts. I do some affiliate marketing. I do better with it on my blog, where it's links, and I've got a lot of traffic to my website already. And so people are clicking on those links and making purchases. Doing it on social media takes a lot of content and takes a decent number of followers to really sell anything. So really ask yourself if you've got that kind of time to invest in it. I would say for most student athletes, you don't, but really ask yourself those hard questions before you waste too much time on it. And remember, for most of you, I think for all of you probably, even free product, you've got to disclose to compliance. That's my compliance disclaimer. Licensing and usage, I'm not going to go too deep on this because I want to make sure we leave time for questions, but some of the things you're going to get in your DMs as well, if you're active on social media, is people who want to license content you've already created. They saw a photo or they saw a video. And in fact, I was having this conversation with Leah Clapper, this gymnast at UF yesterday. She had a TikTok that went viral of her body surfing over these big exercise balls. You guys may have seen it. I saw it and actually didn't realize it was her until we started talking about it yesterday. And she told me that 3 different companies came to her and wanted to license the video. And they essentially put it in these databases that they have, that brands or other creators can come in and buy the license to use on their own website or social or whatever. And she signed up for it because it wasn't exclusive. It didn't cost her any money. It was content she had already created. And she was telling me yesterday, like, she got a notice from PayPal last week that she just randomly got a deposit from them. And then she got another one yesterday. So she's actually started making money on the licensing of this video, and that it has been worth it to her. She didn't really have to do anything because she had already created it. But the example that I have here is one I want you to be aware of if you ever get an offer like this. This one that I have in the example, they were going to have exclusive rights to that video. So that licensing platform wasn't going to let this person sign up with any other licensing platform. And the person was only going to get paid if somebody eventually made a purchase off of that one platform. So you really want to think that through. Do you want to give up the rights to it so that you now can't allow anyone else to license it? That's most of the time probably not worth it. You'll have to make that decision for yourself, but beware of that exclusive kind of language. I'm actually going to skip over the next one because I think I made my point. And I want to make sure we talk about some of these other things. One last issue that student athletes have already started running into is getting paid. So if you do the deal directly with the brand, you may be responsible for sending in an invoice, and you may have to chase them around for payment, unfortunately. I've worked with some big, even magazines that I've written for that I had to chase around for payment. So just because it's a big brand name doesn't mean they'll be great at paying you. That is one protection the marketplaces offer. If you're doing the deal on the marketplace platform, they actually are going to take the money and they're going to hold it in trust for you until you complete your end of the deal. And then they're going to release the money to you. They're going to take out that step where you have to chase around the brand for money. And on most of those marketplaces, you can bring a deal to the marketplace. So say somebody reaches out to you in your DMs and you don't want to get in a situation where this happens, you can tell them, I'm over on market price, can you come over here to do the deal? They've got a contract we can use. They're going to make sure that I meet my deadlines and I send you my deliverables. They're going to make sure I get paid at the end. So you can actually have someone offer you the deal outside of the platform and then bring it to the platform to complete. And that's going to give you some protection around the deal as well. And if a brand isn't wanting to do that, that might be a red flag that you would want to consider. And maybe put some things in place. Maybe you get a little money up front. I've done that before where I get sort of like a deposit up front to ensure that I at least get something from them. So another thing to take into consideration as you're doing these. And that can go for not just social media marketing, that can go for camps and clinics as well. If someone wants to license your name for a camp or a clinic, I personally wouldn't let them wait till after the camp or clinic is over and they've used my name, maybe I was there in person helping, and then having to chase them for payment after. I would probably make them put like 50% down or some amount down when I sign the contract, and then the rest could be paid after, but you might want to get a little something up front. So just something to keep in mind. And then what I think is really interesting about NIL is that it is genuinely created a new economy. There are so many new jobs now that exist that are just about NIL. I was having this conversation with a student athlete, a grad student at UF the other night. She was like, I love NIL. Like, I want to figure out how I can do more around NIL after graduation. And sort of the answer to that was, well, there's a lot of different things you could do. There are new jobs being created in athletic departments. I just spoke last week to an NIL coordinator that just got hired at Memphis. I know San Diego State University, they have an NIL coordinator. I got an email yesterday from Illinois' NIL coordinator. Sometimes there's NIL coordinators for the whole athletic department. There's several football programs that have hired NIL people just for the football team. I mean, we're seeing a lot of jobs, and I think we would have seen it happen faster had it not been for the pandemic. But athletic departments were still getting their, sort of budgets back in order and getting their revenue back up. And so we're just starting to see that pick up, but there are absolutely going to be jobs in athletic departments around NIL. We also see clinics from law students and accounting students who are helping student athletes with legal issues or setting up LLCs, or they're helping them figure out their taxes if it's accounting students. I've had undergrad and graduate students contact me who are agents and who are representing a sibling who's a student athlete, or they're helping their roommate who's a student athlete. We've seen students who are becoming essentially personal assistants for their friends and their siblings who are student athletes. I've even seen student athletes helping other student athletes with managing their inbox and their direct messages and all that kind of stuff. You've got editors and graphic designers, website designers, social media managers. I mean, there's all these people that can help student athletes. And we're seeing a lot of other students, non-athletes, get involved, which I think is kind of cool. And then we're seeing a lot of student athletes become co-founders of companies. Some of them are founding their own, some of them are co-founding, some of them are taking equity stakes in companies. The Cavender twins, who are Division I women's basketball players at Fresno State, they have done a lot of NIL deals because they have a huge following on Instagram and on TikTok. And one of their strategies has been to start asking for equity in companies, and not just to get paid, but to really set themselves up long-term to be able to benefit from these partnerships. And then sort of last but not least is I wanted to talk through kind of the trends that we're seeing. I thought NIL was largely going to be an individual activity. I mean, it's your name, image, and likeness. So I thought this was mainly going to be an individual activity, but we've seen so many group deals, and not necessarily group licensing like I was talking about earlier, but Where a restaurant does something with an entire offensive line, or a company does something with an entire women's basketball team. And we've seen a lot of these group deals, and a lot of student athletes who get offered something by a brand and say, okay, but I also want to include some of my teammates in this. And student athletes making sure other people on their team are getting taken care of. I just had an Auburn gymnast on my podcast last week who got offered an NFT deal to do an NFT series called Black Girl Magic. And she told them, I want to do it, but I want to bring in other Black female gymnasts to be part of this. And she brought in other Black female gymnasts that she was friends with from other schools to be part of this with her. So we're seeing more and more of that. Collectives and crowdfunding is becoming huge. In fact, I'm doing an entire webinar on that later on in March. These collectives are popping up around individual institutions. It's usually alumni or boosters who want to make sure that the student athletes at their school are taken care of. So they're forming these collectives that allow like the average fan to be able to get involved in name, image, and likeness. So if you're a fan and you want to help support student athletes at your school, if you don't have a business, there might not be a good way for you to work with them directly. And so the collectives have allowed individual fans to make one-time contributions, or sometimes it's a monthly membership, and help support student athletes. And in return, they get live Q&As, or they get autographed merchandise. Every collective is doing it a little bit differently, but they've really been formed to allow fans to get more involved in name, image, and likeness, which wasn't necessarily something I saw coming. We talked about group licensing and how that's growing. We're also seeing a lot of pro sports teams go in and do deals with student athletes at all levels. We've seen hockey teams and baseball teams do this. There have been a number of them who've partnered with student athletes to help them spread the word about their sport, about their games. Minor league baseball teams who are working with student athletes that are in the same town to help promote ticket specials and that sort of thing. So that's been interesting to see the pro teams get involved as well. And then a lot of student-founded companies happening in this space too. I talked earlier about Chloe Mitchell and her Playbooked brand. We've seen a number of those sort of student-athlete-founded companies. The quarterback at Miami and the quarterback at FSU, who you wouldn't necessarily think are friends, they are, and they formed another marketplace that's called Dreamfield together and have been doing a lot with that as well. And this is sort of my last thing, and then I want to leave a couple of minutes for you guys to be able to ask questions. But obviously, this has not been without issues. We've got a patchwork of state laws and institutional rules that are creating some interesting situations for schools, where some schools are able to do more for their student athletes than others are, based on whether or not they have a state law and what their institutional rules are. It's hard for brands to navigate because it's different from school to school. A lot of questions about how involved athletic departments should be in this. Some are really involved, some are really hands off. International student athletes, I had a lot of international student athletes at UF the other night trying to figure out how they can get involved. Right now, their student visas don't allow for them to do brand deals here in the US, but there's some question as to whether or not they can do them when they are back home and working with companies in their home countries. High school student athletes in some states, I think there's 6 states now that allow high school student athletes to do NIL deals. And we're starting to see that grow, but still a lot of states that don't allow that. And then Title IX issues, this hasn't really heated up yet, but I think it's coming in terms of how athletic departments are supporting their student athletes. So if they hire an NIL coordinator that's only for the football team, is that a Title IX violation? Because they're doing something for the football team, they're not doing for anyone else. So therefore, if it's football, then they're not doing anything for any female student athletes. There's, I guess, a couple of female football players out there, but not very many. So I think we're going to start to see more and more of that in terms of how institutions are helping their student athletes with these deals. So just some things to keep in mind. I'm happy to answer some questions. If we don't get to it here, this is my email. I'm on all the major social media platforms as Sports Biz Miss, tons of resources on business of college sports. There's a page called NIL Hub that has tons of stuff. I talked about all the trackers that I have, but email me if you can't find what you're looking for, shoot me a DM, and I'm happy to help you find it or help you navigate whatever you're trying to do with NIL. I'll leave this up here for a minute.
Thank you so much, Kristi. Again, let's give her virtual round of applause. all the emojis that you can send her way.
Thank you, guys.
And yes, we are at time, but just wanted to make sure that everyone, I know there was 2 questions in the chat. Her contact information is on the screen. I'm going to have you reach out to her directly for those, because there were some great questions. They just wanted your insight on a few different topics that came about. But all in all, it was great. I want to again thank Kristi Dosh for taking the time out to educate us all on this interesting topic that is definitely evolving. And I want to thank Dr. Stacy Altman from East Carolina University for co-hosting this session with me on today. And I will turn it over to Dr. Agard. Any final goodbyes, Kristi? I'll give you the final goodbye.
No, just thank you so much. Absolutely email me if you had a question and we didn't get to it. I am happy to answer those. It might take me a day or 2 to get back to you, but I will absolutely answer you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out today. I'll be in touch.